What's the most awkward thing that's ever happened during a one-night stand? Story 1. I was 19 at the time, working as a security guard at a mall in New York. Been flirting hard with this gorgeous girl who just started working at the Hollister. One night, she asked me to give her a ride home after closing because her car was having issues and her ride bailed on her. We got to her place, and she asked me if I wanted to come up and smoke a little weed, which I was down for. Things progressed pretty quickly once we got upstairs, and before I knew it, clothes were coming off. She's just absolutely stunning, and I'm basically drooling at this point. Everything is going super well and indications are good that this is going to be more than a one-time thing. We're about 40 minutes in, and she's ready to go all in now. She wants to start from behind. I spread those cheeks to get that view we all love before taking the plunge, and what do I see? Just to the side of her butthole is a pebble-sized chunk of poo. I make a split-second decision that, well, shit happens, lol, so I'm going to try and swipe that son of a bitch off of there and keep going. I make a move like I'm slowly massaging both of her butt cheeks and slide both of my thumbs, one on either side, slowly up the crack of her, but in success along the way I get that little bastard. But this is the moment where I fucked up. I hesitated because I didn't know where the hell I was going to wipe it after I got it off of her. In that moment of hesitation, she glances over her left shoulder and sees the chunk of poo on my thumb and loses her ever-loving shit. I'm going to be 40 next year, and in all the years since I have never heard a sound quite like the sound that came out of her in that moment. It was like a screaming banshee. She jumps off the bed and runs out of the room sobbing. I follow, and she locks herself in the bathroom. I spent the next few minutes trying to talk to her through the door with her screaming at me to just leave and crying, so I left. I try to message her throughout the morning the next day, but she won't answer me. I decided I'd try to have a word with her when I see her at work, but when I got to the store they told me she quit that morning. I never heard from her again. Story 2. Met her at a metal/alternative club on my birthday. We got back to mine and the electricity was off, which was fine as I lit a few candles, and it set a great mood. The next morning I'm awoken by 10 of my friends as they've arrived at my place to abduct me for some day drinking at a brewery. She had to walk out of the bedroom to 10 guys side-eyeing each other. What made it worse was that she couldn't find her glasses, which had meant she couldn't get dressed either. So she had to walk out in my duvet and ask for help. The final straw was that because I was going to be drinking, I couldn't drive. So I had to ask one of my friends to give her a ride to her place, and she ended up sitting in the back and me in front. There is no configuration in the car where it isn't awkward. She ended up giving me her email address, which she never used, and I didn't question it for a second. A few months later it occurred to me that she had handled that whole situation super gracefully and I'd had a lot of fun. So I managed to track her down. Been married 16 years now, and she still handles all of my idiocy with grace. Longest one-night stand of my life. Story 3. This wasn't a one-night stand in my case, but a long-term girlfriend. It was morning, and she had said her stomach felt a bit off. Nothing major though, and she was going to work a bit later. Before she left, I wanted to get one in. In missionary, she came so hard that I felt her squirt all over my dick/balls, but mostly my balls. Then the smell hit me, and I looked down and realized she hadn't squirt. She came so hard she explosively blasted my balls with diarrhea. Another worst part, the thought of her squirting all over my dick made me instantly hit the vinegar strokes, and by the time I noticed it was in fact poop, it was too late. So I was just hunched over her, mortified, retching, while my dick uncontrollably shot rope all over her poopy lower half. I've never seen a girl more mortified. I collected the sheets, threw them away, and got in the shower. I soaped and rinsed myself like 10+ times. We went to bed that night. I woke up at like 3 a.m. to her crying. I was like, "What's wrong?" She was so mortified she couldn't sleep and had just been up crying. Somehow I managed to compartmentalize that event and still have sex with her after. Story 4. I hooked up with a single mom once, and when I woke up in the morning she had gone and got her kid and refused to leave in the morning. So I was basically hungover sitting there with a little child running around my house and this girl just sitting on the couch watching TV repeatedly complaining, "But I have nowhere to go." Finally got her out eventually. I hated that. Poor kid. How did I get her to leave? I faked saying I had to go to work, and she just offered to clean the house while I was gone and insisted on staying. I then had to get blunt and tell her that not only was I not comfortable with her being at my house alone, but that I am not going to assume any liability if something happens to her child in my very not child-proofed house. It was a toddler. She tried to bargain some more, and I finally threatened to have her removed by the police, and she finally left. I had no idea how trashy this woman really was at the time. Some years later, she apparently ended up getting hooked on H, and she and a few others almost killed someone over drugs or money. She lost her kids, went to prison, etc. The throat game was vicious though. Story 5. This was the first ONS I had ever had. and I had no clue what I was doing. None at all. When I showed up, I suggested turning on a movie. I figured we'll cozy up during the film and hands will start going places, etc. You know how it goes. But I am a huge nerd. A computer nerd especially. And her laptop was riddled with viruses. I had never seen such a messed up PC in my entire life. She also had no movies. And this was actually before streaming services. At this point, Netflix was DVD by mail only. So I figured no biggie, I'll just download BitTorrent and find a movie real quick. But I couldn't even get that far due to the state of her PC. She had animated ads and shit running on her desktop. If it was a human, I would have pulled the plug. So instead of being able to find a movie, or just saying F it, let's just get naked, my inner nerd started to fix it. And she fell asleep while I fixed up her PC. Then first thing in the morning, we finally did the deed, only for me to finish in about 1.7 seconds. This is the first time I've ever told this story in any capacity. Probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. Story 6. I hooked up with one of my coworkers at a restaurant once. I lost the condom inside her. Even as drunk as I was, I could feel the condom inside her. So I stopped and told her we needed to stop to find it. She, understandably, got mad at me thinking I was lying about using a condom in the first place. She was small, had short fingers, and couldn't reach it. I had to plead with her to trust that I was wearing one, and that it came off, and that it staying in there was unhealthy, and that I could get it out. After some back and forth, she finally allowed me to reach inside her with my fingers and dig around until I found and removed it. The relief was bittersweet for the both of us. Working with her was pretty fucking funny after that. The sexual tension never went away, but we never acted on it ever again after that. Story 7. Absolutely wasted. Bars closed. Stumble home with some guy. Start doing it. Stop after some amount of time because the dude's dog has jumped onto the bed and has started licking itself incessantly, and then us. The weird part was that he didn't think this was a problem and we should just ignore it if he started licking us, as if this was what happened when he had sex with people. I insisted we stop and turn the light on / get the dog out, and it turned out I'd gotten my period, which was not expected at all, and the entire white bed was covered in blood. I mean massacre level. Shocking. The dog was licking the blood. He wanted to put everything in trash bags immediately, understandably, so I helped him do that while apologizing profusely. He silently went to the shower and I bolted. I texted him the next day and asked for his mailing address so I could send new bedding, and he never responded. Never saw or heard from him ever again, which was just fine with me. Story 8. So I had a pretty bad shoulder dislocation back in high school. Played first base for our baseball team, and a runner ran into my arm when I was fully stretched trying to catch a throw on a slow roller down the third base line. Healed up okay, but my arm would occasionally pop out and I'd have to pop it back in, kinda like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon 2. Anyway, sophomore year in college, I'm canoodling with a young lady that I met at a party. We're in her extremely unstable bed, and I'm on top, arms locked out in a push-up position to try to stabilize myself whilst thrusting. Bed ends up moving a bit more than I expected, and of course my left shoulder decides to pop out of the socket while she was raising her head up. I fall forward and my collarbone drives directly into the bridge of her nose. Blood goes everywhere. We end up at the school infirmary, and they take her back to set her nose. I'm in the waiting area, and a nurse comes out with 2 campus police officers. They proceed to ask me what happened, and my brain slowly realizes that they think I must have hauled off and punched her. So I'm mortified, start telling them what happened in a completely panicked rush. By the end of the story, the cops were trying their best to hold in laughter. I didn't get arrested, but for some reason I never saw that young lady again. Story 9. Met up with a dude after chatting for a bit, pretty sure we would hit it off and then hit it. When I got to the bar, he had on extraordinarily tight pants. The tightest pants I have ever seen a dude wear. I was trying to check out the package, but couldn't see a thing. Went back to his place. Started making out. He pulls down his pants, and his ding-dong tumbled out of his pants down to his knee. I mean, it was fucking long. I was genuinely in shock, because where did he put it? Was it in a man bun in his pants? Was it retractable? If he had tucked it, it would have come out the back of his pants. I've only turned down one dick in my life for it being way too big, so I'll give it the old college try. I told him to go down on me because we were going to need some loosening up before we try this. He tells me he doesn't eat pussy, and I tell him you aren't putting that in my cactus dry pussy. Then he asks if I will peg him. He says I like to fuck and be fucked. Sure, Jan. You don't give head, but you want me to peg you? GTFOH, which is exactly what I did. Story 10. This won't be by anyone's standard the most or worst, but when I was in college, we drive from my small college town. About 45 minutes away was the major college for my state that had so much more to offer. We'd usually go on a Friday after class and hit the bars and clubs in that city, and the group of us, like me and 3 buddies, would split the cost on a cheap motel room, so we'd not have to drive back and stuff that night. There was always an understanding that if anyone got lucky, they could bring their date back to the motel, and the rest of the group would give some privacy for a time before things settled down for the night. So one beautiful Saturday morning, I awoke in the motel laying next to a girl that I had zero memory of from the night before. Like none. And even worse, she was not attractive. Not at all. So I woke up and started stirring about, and all my buddies were looking at me and laughing because they were trying to be quiet, but they remembered the night before much more than I did, obviously. So this girl wakes up and immediately is like, "Good morning, lover," and just really laying it on me way too much for someone I did not even remember. She asked to use the phone. This was way back in the old days before cell phones. Yes, I am old. She calls her mom to explain that she had met a great guy last night, and I heard mention of, well, I guess yes, he is now my boyfriend. I was dying. She gets off the phone and explains that her mom cannot wait to meet me and that they want to have me over for lunch that afternoon. And she is full on like we are a total couple. My friends are around me, just barely containing themselves from bursting out laughing. I get up to use the bathroom, and when I went to pee, my dick and whole crotch and stomach area are covered in dried blood. I legitimately thought there was a chance I had been injured the night before and searched for a wound. She was nearby or something and made a comment about battle wounds from the night before and said she was sorry she was such a mess, being on her period and all that. I will also mention, I have always been very squeamish about period blood. Don't like to discuss it, deal with it, or in general go there when a woman is on her cycle. No offense, ladies, it's just something that makes me a bit nauseous. So here I was, covered in some weird gross stranger's period blood, who thinks we are now a couple, who is of the class of person who just tells her mama that she shacked up with me last night and had no problem with it, and she's thinking I'm going to be her boyfriend and have lunch with her? Finally, my friend Brad threw me a bit of a lifeline because I think he could tell I was shell-shocked. He explained we had to get back to our campus and couldn't go to the lunch. He also explained we were in a hurry, so we'd have to take her home now. She got her things, and we drove her to her trailer park where she got out of the car and stood there, I believe, expecting I was going to get out and kiss/exchange numbers/whatever. But as soon as she got out of the car, I said, "Drive. Just go," and Brad, who had driven, pulled out quickly and we drove away. And my friends absolutely destroyed me all the way home and explained how the night before I had gotten so drunk and I was convinced that this girl looked like Tiffany Thyssen from Saved by the Bell. She looked much more like Screech. And I was telling everyone that she and I were in love. Not my best moment. Very horrible. I have nothing to be proud of in my actions on that entire night. Not proud, but it did happen. Story 11. My friend and I went to a club, did some dancing and drinking, and she met a guy she wanted to hook up with. Me, her, that dude, and the dude's friend/roommate went back to their apartment. My plan was to just chill on the couch and watch TV while my homie was getting her freak on, but the roommate started flirting with me, and even though I wasn't super attracted to him, I thought, what the hell, why not? I could go for a lay. He took me to a bedroom. It was a children's bedroom, with no children in it. Thankfully, kids must have been at mom's house that weekend. Bunk beds and all. We get down to business and start fucking on the floor. About 2 minutes into it, this dude is on top pounding away and says, "Whose pussy is this? Tell me whose pussy this is." Like, bruh, I met you an hour ago and we both know this is the one and only time we're ever gonna fuck. So no, you will not be claiming ownership of my pussy. After he came, I sure fucking didn't, and pulled out. The condom was not on his dick. It had come off and was way up in my vagina, pretty much giving my cervix a bear hug. I had to get on my knees, reach all the way up into my pussy, not his pussy, and fish out the condom, all while surrounded by bunk beds with like Spider-Man bed sheets. This was about 25 years ago, and I still laugh about it from time to time. Thanks for the awkward memories, Jason. Story 12. I spent years with a crush on this girl throughout high school, but we never really synced up when we were single. Very last goodbye party before leaving for college, and who do I see at the party? This girl. She has her friend come up to me and be very direct that she's interested if I am, and 30 minutes later we're in my bed. I take her panties off and boom. Seafood landfill. I had never and have never since smelled something so bad. I tried so hard to keep going, but I could not stay hard. I figured she'd air out overnight, so I blame things on whiskey dick and we go to sleep. We make a go of it again in the morning, but it still stinks just as bad. As we're in missionary and the smell creeps up, we look at each other and there's no hiding it. We get dressed, spend 30 minutes in an awkward AF ride home. I drop her off and we never speak again. Story 13. I meet a girl at the club. A week later, she invites me over. I was hesitant from the start because she had roommates. She didn't want to make the drive to my place, so I went over. We had the place to ourselves. Her friends had gone out. We get busy and everything is going well. She gets a phone call that she ignores, and then there's a light knock on her bedroom door. She gets dressed and walks out. It was her friends/roommates. They proceeded to lecture her about sleeping with men she just met, how I might have STDs, that I could be dangerous, mention that sleeping around is no way to get over her ex. This went on for almost an hour. By this time I'm dressed, planning my escape, and rethinking my life decisions. She comes back into the room and says it was nothing and that they were just a little tipsy. She convinces me to stay until the morning because they'd be asleep. We cuddle and she falls asleep. I'm awake the whole night and I can still hear them talking in the living room. I wake her up and tell her I need to pee. I had held it for almost 2 hours by then. She walks out and brings a Gatorade. She drinks half, tells me to drink the rest, and to pee in the empty bottle. Morning comes around and I can still hear the TV on. This girl is dead asleep and mumbles to just lock the door behind me. I walk out hoping roommates are sleeping. They weren't. I greeted them as I walked past to get to front door. Damn lock was stuck and I asked them for help. They pretty much called me a dumbass before unlocking the door for me. It's funny now, but that shiz was embarrassed. Story 14. Back in my single days, mid-2000s, I had my one and only ONS. I'm super low maintenance regularly and never really dress up for much unless I need to. But this time, I got dolled up for a date. Heels, hair/makeup, even wore the fancier Tiffany necklace my former roommate got me, very sentimental to me. We have our date, it goes well, we end up back at his place. In our very drunken, very urgent passion. We barely make it past his foyer and just get to it on a very plush carpet. I don't even get my shoes or dress off. It was awkwardly quick, which was its own thing, but in that moment, I didn't care. Sometimes it happens. And as we go to get up and clean off, I discovered the buckle/zipper on my heels and the clasp of my necklace got snagged in the carpet, completely tangled, and the necklace had my neck pinned to the floor, almost choking me. I panic, making it worse. He tells me just to snap the necklace chain to free myself, and I get overly emotional. I will falsely blame alcohol here, crying about how special the necklace is to me. He just stands there frozen, and I'm drunkenly whining about how I can't just replace the chain because it won't be the chain my roommate got for me. He tells me to hurry, because he told the taxi driver who took us to his place to wait for me to take me home. I ended up breaking the chain and left it there, as well as my shoes and their stupid-ass tangled buckles. Ran to the taxi barefoot, and went home with the most confusing shame I've ever felt. Did a ton of self-reflection on that ride, a lot of mental unpacking, and vowed to never drink on a first date again. Story 15. Oh, I got this. I hope this gets read, since I'm posting late in the thread. I'm about to tell you my best one-night stand story. I apologize in advance for typos because I'm going to fly through this just like I tell the story IRL. So rewind 15 years, and I'm a spry, lean, mean guy playing in a very popular band. I see this girl all the time at our shows. Mixed girl, great body, average face. Groupie. I go to an after-party post-gig, and she's there. The party happens to be at a friend's house. Her parents are out of town. Big house. Lots of people. I make my rounds and run into this girl, and she straight up says she's DTF. I look at my watch. I got the time. Let's go upstairs and see where it goes. Just like that, we take a spare bedroom, and it gets hot really fast. She's tearing my clothes off, and she's in bra and panties. She pushed me to the bed and attacks me. Wild aggression. She gets on top of me and starts riding, but then things go sideways. She's moaning and moans, torn to screaming. She's on top of me screaming bloody murder. I'm looking up at her and she's grinding and freaking the fuck out. I'm not talking about enjoying it screaming. I'm talking about screaming like a banshee. People start knocking on the door. I'm just lying there in bewilderment. Suddenly she says she's going to come and punches me in the fucking face. So hard it knocks my lip ring off. She gets up off me and still just keeps screaming. Standing in the middle of the room in only her bra, screaming. She goes to the nightstand and flips it over, throws a lamp and throws it, shattering it, screaming. I'm lying there with my pants at my ankles staring and confused. She goes to the fireplace mantle and swipes across it, breaking all the picture frames. People banging on the door. She's screaming and crying. I'm naked. I'm scared. No shit, she picks up a candlestick and stares at me screaming. Comes to me, grabs me by the leg and pulls me off the bed into the floor and looks at me, wild, screaming. I think, this is how I die. Cornell mustard, in the bedroom, with a candlestick. She starts beating the mattress with the candlestick, over and over. People break down the door. It looks like a WA war zone. Knocked over nightstand, broken glass, broken lamp, and she's naked beating the mattress screaming bloody murder. I'm on the floor naked in front of friends that broke down the door, still beating the mattress with the candlestick. She runs out the door after grabbing some clothes. I feel like I was in Afghanistan. The room is destroyed. I couldn't explain to people what I just experienced. I go downstairs and I shit you not, she's sitting on a stool eating a raw tomato like you would an apple, juices flowing down her face. A fucking mess. She comes up to me and force kisses me, sizing raw tomato in my mouth. Oh baby, you're so hot. Oh God, no one has ever made me come before. Oh God, I love you. No one has ever gotten me off. I only come to violence. WDF? She's begging me to go back upstairs now. OMG, I'll take care of you. Let me pleasure you. I promise I'll be different. I look at my watch. I got time. We go back upstairs and this time I take control. Hard, fast, brutal. I finish. I leave. Couple days later, someone breaks into my Jeep and leaves me love notes. 100 missed calls. Total stalker. She had a shirt made and broke into my Jeep and left it for me. It says stalkerly. I still have the shirt. Story 16. The very last time I used Tinder, got to date that red-headed lawyer and went to her place for dinner. I already didn't feel it. I was burned out by unsuccessful dates, and it turned out that girl was batshit crazy, so the dinner went awkward. But oh well. The evening evolved towards sex, because that's what people on Tinder do, and she offered me to stay at her place, which I unenthusiastically did. But then she started moaning and screaming when we barely started making out. I was so freaked out I said I needed to go to the bathroom, and once in there, my nose exploded in blood. Must have been nerves giving up or something, as I was under a lot of stress at the time. But it just wouldn't stop. The whole damn sink, floor around it, and mirror were covered in blood splatter, to the point she came to help me. It naturally ended the night abruptly, and I left her place politely with toilet paper plugs up my nose. And then my car got wrecked by some lady, on the way back at 2 a.m., who burned a red light. I've never used Tinder ever again, and that was nearly 10 years ago. Story 17. In college, I matched with this girl right as I was heading out of town for the weekend, so we couldn't meet up that night. We spent the whole weekend talking and sexting, and I was talking a huge game telling her how much I was going to blow her mind and shatter her world, and she was texting me the dirtiest stuff, so I was hyped. As soon as I got back into town, I went to her apartment, and we immediately started going at it. Making out, taking clothes off, it was full animal. I went down on her, and after a few minutes she told me to put it in her, and I went to do so, and I went completely soft. The softest you could ever be. And no matter what I did, I could not get hard. Needless to say, the vibe was completely ruined, and we just laid on her bed awkwardly until she said, "So, like, are you gonna get hard, or do you just need to leave?" After that, I knew there was no chance I'd ever get hard for the night. So I just said an awkward bye and walked out of her room half naked, where her roommate was just sitting on the couch watching me leave. That girl blocked me immediately. It still haunts me to this day. Story 18. I met someone local here on Reddit. She DM'd me after commenting on one of my posts or something. It's rare to meet someone local, so I was pretty stoked. She initiates the sexy talk rather quickly, so we exchange pics and escalate. Leads rather quickly to me grabbing a hotel room in her side of town. When she arrives, she is pretty nervous and way less confident than she was online. I chalk it up to maybe she's not used to this type of thing, and do my best to make her comfortable. I take control and guide her through, and everything goes pretty well for a first encounter. When we're done, she thanks me for such a good time and says she hasn't had orgasms like that in years. That she really appreciates the effort I put in to get her there rather than just making her feel used, which is pretty cool. Then she completely breaks down and starts bawling and crying. She is crying and apologizing, telling me that she lied to me. She's been married forever and just wanted to remember what it was like to be with a hot guy with muscles again. That came out of left field, and I didn't know how to comfort her. It was just awkward. If she would have kept her cool, I really would have never known. The deception was kind of shitty, even if she was in a bad marriage. Despite my attraction to her and fairly decent chemistry, there was no way I could continue on with her under the circumstances, making this a one-night stand scenario. In retrospect, I probably should have figured something shady was going on when she wanted to meet at a hotel, but I had just come out of being in a relationship for 24 years and was new to the game. Story 19. In college, my girlfriend of a couple years and I had recently broken up because I was ready to move on, and there was another girl I was really interested in and pursuing. In the interim, I took a random home from the bar who told me she was freaky, and I let her know my ex had left her vibrator and didn't take it with her. She was all about it. We went back to my place, and I pulled out my couch as I didn't want to take her into my room. She was definitely a freak, and we went to town, and she went nuts on my ex's toy as well. When I woke, she was gone, and after cleaning up, I noticed the vibrator was gone. I had a big laugh with all my friends, telling them a random I took home made off with my ex's vibrator. Not long after, the girl I was pursuing came over with her beagle. I was rolling a golf ball around the room, and it went under the couch. The girl got on her hands and needs to get it and pulled out a very crusty, very used, very dirty vibrator. She had a great sense of humor, which was a big reason I was into her, and we laughed about that for a long time. Story 20. The only one-night stand I ever had. I was living with 3 other roommates in a house we were renting during college. One night, one of my friends had a friend from high school and her friends visit so that they could go to a party nearby. My roommates and I had a chill night of drinking and playing Super Smash. I fell asleep on the couch early and woke up around 11 p.m. My roommates were socializing with the gals who had got back from the party. I had sobered up in my sleep and didn't feel like restarting, so I went to bed. We lived in a split level, and I had drawn the short straw and ended up in this furnished room in the basement that people had to pass through in order to get to the laundry room. So I had put a curtain up across the room for some privacy. I go into my bedroom, and there's this girl sleeping in a sleeping bag in the middle of the floor. She's not on my side of the curtain, so I think, a little weird, but I still have my space and my privacy. I quietly make my way to bed. As I'm going through my curtain, I hear, "Hey, hi, sorry to wake you," I responded. She looked at me for a long few seconds and said, "You're pretty cute. Wanna make out?" I went to an engineering college with a ton of guys and very few women. The sex gods have presented me with a gift, and I'm not one to look a gift whore in the mouth, so I don't question how wild of an introduction that is. "Sure," I say. Maybe the kissing was an interview for assessing if I was a decent fuck. Ick. I do know I'm a pretty good kisser. A minute or two into kissing, she plunges her hand into my pajamas and grabs my dick. What proceeded was the roughest sex I've had in my life. That's not to say it was good sex. She bit me hard enough that I thought she was going to draw blood. She sucked my dick so hard that it actually hurt. When I was fucking her, her head kept hitting the headboard. Hard. I was genuinely concerned for her. When I stopped to reposition, she was confused and told me to keep going. None of that is the awkward part. Just bad sex. We finish and go to sleep. I'm asleep for about an hour before I wake up. Her face is next to mine on the pillow 3 inches from my face, staring at me. "Everything okay?" I ask. "I have a hard time sleeping," she says. "You don't have to sleep with me if you don't want to. I won't be offended if you go back to your sleeping bag." "No, I'm comfortable. I just have a hard time sleeping." "Okay." I fall back asleep. 2 hours later, 3 to 4 a.m. I wake up. She's wide awake staring at me. "Oh, did you wake up too?" I ask. "I haven't fallen asleep," she responds. "I sleep until 7 a.m. She's staring at me when I wake up again. I asked her if she slept at all. She says she didn't. I genuinely think that she spent at least 7 hours staring at my face. I had some morning sex with her because I apparently don't learn. She left with her friends. Never saw her again. Weirdest hookup of my life. Story 21. Alright, I got one. I was in high school and trying to rebound from being dumped again by my shitty high school boyfriend. I don't remember how, but I found out one of the cute theater boys was DTF. We picked an afternoon when my mom's house was empty and met up. Made out a little, and got naked like clumsy teenagers do. I'm massaging this dude's flaccid package, trying to get things going, and he tells me this is his first time. He's cute and funny and popular and had kind of a ladies' man persona, and had no qualms about explicitly making a fuck appointment with me. So I laughed, thinking he literally had to be kidding me. How could he be a virgin? Then we're both laughing awkwardly and he's like, "I can't do this." I guess he thought I was laughing at him, and it psyched him out. I was so blindsided I couldn't even explain. I just wanted to respect his wishes. So we got dressed and I took him home. But it was the closest he'd ever come to fucking, so he insisted that we stop for a victory sandwich before I dropped him off at his parents' house. Fucking love that, lol. Then there's the time where the guy told me mid-coitus that he liked me because I look like his mom. That's one for another day. Story 22. Had a girl I had known for years where we on and off would start flirting and sexting whenever we'd casually run into each other somewhere. Usually, our schedules wouldn't match up, or one of us would start seeing someone before we ever actually hooked up. Finally, after 3 years of this, she came to a Halloween party with me that we thought was going to be adults only and more mature themed. So she dressed up in a very sexy costume that had a short skirt, and I later found out she was wearing lingerie and crotchless panties underneath. Turns out it was a very family-friendly party with numerous kids running around everywhere. People are complimenting me on how gorgeous she is. Some thought I hired a stripper as a date. We spent the majority of the time either outside in the backyard or in the kitchen eating away from everyone else, sneaking in some make-out sessions and feeling each other up, building up tension. We decided to leave the party early and head back to my place. Start drinking a little more and open up some champagne. We start going at it. She's way out of my league looks-wise. We start going rougher and more aggressive. My headboard's shaking really loudly, but we don't care, it's a really hot moment. Apparently, the universe thought it was too hot and we needed to cool off, so the painting on the wall above my headboard falls off, hits my headboard, knocks off the half-full glass bottle of champagne that I stupidly set on there. The bottle falls and hits her on the forehead. The impact from the hit causes the champagne to forcefully shoot directly into my eyes, blinding me. It ends up in her eyes too. Both of us are now screaming in pain because our eyes are on fire, and she has a nice cut on her head which started bleeding, so now she has blood running down her face. Mood instantly killed. We cleaned up, decided we should call it a night. DoorDashed some food, and she Ubered home shortly afterwards. Hung out a couple more times, but it just wasn't the same. She ended up going back to her ex and is now married. But hey, at least I have a good story, I guess. Story 23. Not me, but the story is too good to not share. My friend had met this girl in a bar and hit it off immediately. She was gorgeous, funny, and really sweet. And my friend was besotted instantly. The night went well with lots of dancing and drinking. They exchanged numbers and called it a night. The next day, while nursing a wicked hangover, they arranged for her to come over and watch a movie. My friend just got out of the shower and she was sitting on his bed. He squatted down to choose a DVD, and his hungover bowels emptied through the gap in his shorts and onto the floor. He panicked and whipped his head around to see the face of the horrified girl sitting on his bed. She said, "Did you just actually shit on the floor?" Then proceeded to balk, gag, and run to the bathroom to throw up. She came out of the bathroom and stormed towards the door. The only words she uttered were, "You fucking dirty bastard." Moral of the story, drinking is bad and never squat when you're hungover. Story 24. Got dragged out to a bar. Had no intention of staying long. My identical twin was there with my friends, and they guilt me into stopping by at like 11 at night when I was leaving work. Had a few drinks, went to the bathroom, and as I'm going into the men's bathroom, a pretty hot older woman, older than me, I was around 23, she was about 40, was going into the women's bathroom. I went, washed up, and we both came out at the same time. I made a comment about no way she went to the bathroom, that was too quick. We start chatting and she's only down in my town for the night. She's flat out about wanting to hook up, but there's a catch. I'm thinking like, what catch? This sounds weird, way too easy. And she's like, well, one of your friends has to come hook up with my friend I came here with. And I'm relieved. I'm like, no issue there, my boy Steve will fuck anything, as long as it's not a dude. But if you get him drunk enough, he probably still would. So I'm like, where's your friend? Your friend is a girl, right? And she laughs and is like, yes, she's a girl. She looks for her friend and is like, that's her, and points over to the corner, and it's a few girls in dresses and a huge, almost Samoan-looking dude with a Pittsburgh jersey. I'm like, what color dress is she wearing? And this chick goes, oh, she's in the jersey. I'm talking 6 feet 6 inches, 340 pounds, linebacker, square shoulder ass having Samoan. I'm like, oh fuck, is that a girl? Like born a girl, right? I'm like, let me check with my boy, but I'm sure we can make this work. I go tell my boy Steve I got a chick and she has a friend and they are down. What's he trying to do? He says he is in. I'm like, well, check it out, man, her friend is. She's a big bitch, bro, lol. And he's like, how big? Then he's like, man, don't even worry, I got you. So to make sure, I point out the chick in the jersey and he's like, I've done worse, lol. So plans are set. I tell her and we all hang out. Steve starts ordering shot after shot after shot. I'm like, man, slow the fuck down, and he's talking about he has to get right. So we hang out for another 30 to 40 minutes. It's time to leave. No one can find Steve, but I check with the bar, and they closed out his tab. So we all go to the parking lot, and as we are walking we hear all this yelling, and sure as shit there is Steve, pissing and throwing up on the outside of the bar, and the bouncers are screaming at him. She's like, he's gotta go. No way is he coming. I'm like, fuck, man. So I tell our other friend he has to take Steve, and I turn to my brother, and he's like, absolutely not. I'm like, bro, I'll go to the hotel, you just smoke with her friend and gas her up, I'll smash off and we can roll. He comes, but the whole ride is like, no way I'm doing shit with her, man, like it's not happening. We get to the hotel, I hop out. My brother tells the friend to come to my car, and he will roll up real quick, and me and the chick head to her room. As soon as the door closes, it's on. So about 5 minutes and I'm on the bed, she's blowing me, and the door opens. And I see my brother with his pants around his ankles getting pushed into the room. He's looking at me like a deer in fucking headlights, and she's just pushing him backwards into the room. I'm thinking to myself, why the hell are his pants down? She backs him up to the other bed, and this bitch puts her hands under his armpits, lifts his ass up off the floor like someone picking up a toddler, and throws him on his back on the bed and just falls on him and starts sucking straight floppy. I'm dying laughing. He's like rage staring at me. The girl with me hops on top, and I'm just trying to hurry up at this point because I can tell he's furious. The big bitch looks over at us and in this kind of deep voice is like, "I want you to fuck me like that," and proceeds to climb up on my brother. He just wiggles his way out. She bends over and he just does his thing from the back. A few minutes later he stops, grabs his clothes and goes to the bathroom and slams the door. Then the shower turns on. I'm still laughing at this situation and this big bitch comes over to our bed and starts playing with her friend. I'm like, "Oh hell no," and hurry up and leave. My brother comes out and I bust out laughing. He's pissed. I was like, "Man, what happened? How did she get you up here?" He says she straight up grabbed his blunt and threw it, pulled him out of the car, and when they hit the stairs she pulled his pants down and tried to blow him. Other people are coming down the stairs, so he's like, "I gotta get to the room or get charged," and she just like power sucked his shit as he's moving LL. She did that shit all the way to the room. So yeah, the random night turned into a forever memory of my brother getting thrown around by Bigfoot. Story 25. The best bloody sex of my life. Met a British girl in a club in Langkawi, Malaysia. She was super hot. We flirted for a long time. I was with my friends and she was with her bunch of friends traveling Asia. We club hopped until my friends and her friends wanted to go home. I was renting a scooter, so me and her were riding that to each club. At one point she asked me to go to my place. We were too drunk at that time. Anyways, I tried to ride properly as much as I could. She had maps open on her phone from the back and was being the perfect navigator. I missed a turn and I stopped the scooter, tried to take a U-turn and the scooter fell on my legs. My knees started bleeding. I told her it's okay, and then I started riding again until we were at my street. I missed the turn again and did the same mistake. The scooter was too damn heavy while my drunk self tried to turn it until it fell again, this time scratching my leg and her toe got injured. She started bleeding. She was pissed this time. I calmed her down and we went back to my room. I took her to the bathroom and man, it was a bloodbath. I had to use all the towels to stop the blood on my legs and her toe. In GL during all of this we were too drunk and enjoying it. She was a good old sport. Didn't create any drama. We bandaged each other. Went to bed and that night I probably had the best sex of my life. All night she kept on asking me if I fancy her. The sex was too perfect. I slept like a baby, waking up to another great morning sex. Later realized that the whole sheets were red because of the blood and there were red towels everywhere in the room. Looked like a crime scene. She had to do the walk of shame in the morning in front of my friends. I dropped her to the cab. Honestly, I didn't give a shit about the wounds. It was one of the best nights of my life, though I felt sorry for injuring her badly. I sent an apology later via Instagram, and she said she had the best night as well. On the other hand, my friends probably thought that I had sex with a girl who was on her periods when they saw the room. I still have scars from that night. Proud of them. Story 26. When I was 23, I slept with this girl and man, I was shit-faced. Drank most of a bottle of Tin High. She was drunk too. It was sloppy and gross, but awesome. I thought, man, I'm killing it tonight. She was rolling around, eyes in the back of her head, making weird noises. I was like, damn, am I finally good at this after all these one-stands I have had? Nope. She was super epileptic and didn't tell me. She had a seizure halfway through. I had never seen someone have a seizure before, and I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. And I only knew when she told me the next morning. I was so drunk anyway that even if I did know she was epileptic, I was probably too stupid to realize. I apologized profusely when she told me. I felt like the grossest human in the world. I felt like I accidentally violated this woman, which still in my mind I absolutely did. I hated myself, and still beat myself up over it to this day that I had sex with someone actively having a seizure. She said, "Don't worry about it. It happens all the time." What the fuck? I also got the clap from her. Story 27. Picked her up after talking for a couple of days, went to a lake and talked for like 15 minutes, and ended up having her stripped down in my 99 Solara, basically a Camry but a little nicer. I'm somewhat tall, above 6 feet 1 inch. She is also slightly taller than average, and it's a really low roof in there. Hopped on top of me and rode me for like 30 minutes hunched over, and after she had came several times, could have faked, but she's very sensitive and she thought my innocence was hot or something. She actually said that BTW. I just couldn't come. She had also honked the horn several times while riding me. She tried giving me head, but she had a small mouth and I'm well above average size. It didn't work out for me if you couldn't guess. Mind you, it was Alaska in the winter, so like -10 outside, and by the end of it all the windows were fogged and frosted over, and probably like 30 degrees in the car. Couldn't run the car because I accidentally hit the gas several times while moving to try and get as comfortable as possible, which was not possible MO. When we got there the lot was empty, but someone pulled in after we had been at it for about 10 minutes, had the cabin light on. Windows weren't fogged yet. Only noticed after she got off because I thought I heard a car but couldn't see because it was black outside. Pretty sure they just watched the whole time. Not the best experience for a first time, but we are married now. It's been rocky, but we are working on our problems. Story 28. My fun ONS story. Many moons ago, I was out at a local bar with some friends and their girlfriends. A few of us smoked cigarettes at the time. I was outside with two of the girls smoking. We were joking around and I was kind of insulting them. It's a thing we did. Some girl comes out of nowhere and is all angry at me, telling me I shouldn't talk to them like that. I blow her off, whatever. Go back to what I was doing. She gets in my face and is now even more angry, yelling at me. Now I'm more like, get the fuck away from me. They're my friends. Fuck off. She backs up a bit, but is still coming at me. I was about to just go back inside when she said something along the lines of, "You're such an asshole for treating them like that. Don't you go inside. Where are you going? Do you want to come back to my place?" I did a double take, like, what? She got in my face, angry, and repeated, "Do you want to come back to my place?" I was like, yes. She lived just down the road a bit. She grabbed my hand and took off at a brisk pace, practically dragging me behind her. I was so confused. Eventually, she stops dead in her tracks, gets in my face again, and says, "Wait, what do you think we're gonna do?" I reply, "Fuck." She shakes her head and says, "I fucking knew you would say that," as she plows forward, yanking me along with her. We arrive at her place. She berates me about how much of an asshole I am. While she's removing her clothes, I'm just sitting there like, WTF is going on? We do the thing, and it's all done and she's like, "You can leave now." So I say, "Okay, want to give me your number?" "No." "Okay, well that was fun. Thanks." Story 29. This happened about a month ago. I went on a Hinge date with this guy. We went shooting at a gun range because he's obsessed with guns, and I've been wanting to finally shoot my Glock that I got last year. Afterwards, we went to this bar near the movie theater that we were gonna go to, and we got tipsy. Then, we went to watch Deadpool. After the movie, we didn't want the night to end, so we walked back to the bar and got pretty drunk. We go to his car to sober up, but ended up making out and hooking up in the back of the car. It was going great until he looks up and sees a car driving by. I look up and notice the car. Something about that car made my heart skip a beat. It looked just like my mom's car. I ignore it and we keep going. When I got on top of him and look through the back window, I see that same car parked right beside my car. My heart stops. We stopped what we were doing and I checked my phone. This whole time, my phone was on D&D and my parents had been blowing up my phone and wondering where I was at 3 a.m. to make sure I wasn't dying or anything. I checked their location and it's the exact location that I was at. They had tracked me down. Fuck life 360. I told the guy to start driving, and he does it as he was bare but naked. We drove around until my parents left the area and I get to my car and say bye to the guy. I drive home and notices that my parents were driving near me. I was not going to confront them after they caught me and saw what I was doing, so I changed route and drove 4 hours to another city. I was pretty embarrassed about that whole situation, but the guy told me that it was the best first date he's ever had and he drove home with the biggest smile on his face. The tension between my parents and I was intense and awkward, but it gave me such a memorable story. I'm still dating that guy, and it has been amazing so far. I hope it lasts. Story 30. I used to work with this girl who always flirted with me. Really obvious with it. I wasn't interested, so I never took the bait. One night I was at the bar with some friends. We all worked together, her included, and she showed up. Sat beside me, kept grabbing my junk under the table, saying shit like, "Me and Opie are gonna have sex tonight." I had finally had enough, and figured I'd just give her what she wanted to make her SDFU. We go back to one of the friends' houses. We're sitting and drinking and smoking. Eventually, the friends go to bed, one saying we better not have sex on her futon. So we proceed to have sex on her futon. She all of a sudden acted really nervous and less aggressive about it once it was actually happening. Kept telling me to shush every time I started going faster. Wouldn't let me take her panties off, just told me to pull them to the side. Finally ended up in missionary, and I was just trying to nut and get it over with. But of course, every time I started hitting a good rhythm, she'd say, "Shush," and restart the clock. Finally, I just pretended to finish, put my clothes on, smoked a blunt, and went home. She left massive deep scratches on my back, which someone at work saw the next day. Of course, then everyone knew. Restaurant, everyone sleeps with everyone. She never bugged me about wanting to have sex again, so I guess it was a win. Story 31. Started hanging out with this girl one night. Things were going so great, just talking, laughing, and just having a really great time. One thing led to another. We are in my room of my apartment doing the deed. I comment on how wet she is. She stops suddenly and says, "Wait," runs to the bathroom. All I hear is, "You should probably grab a towel." I get up and turn the lights on. I've never seen so much blood in my life. It was all over my legs, all over my body, all over the bed, all over her. She looked horrified. She thought her period was over. I didn't even know what to say. All I said was, "It's 2 days before Halloween. We are just getting into the spirit." She said, "I love you." We got into the shower and cleaned up, did the deed in there. Then went to bed. Been together 10 years. Married the last 5. Story 32. I had a cougar take me home from the bar when I was about 23 or 24. Woke up in the morning with her 10-year-old kid jumping on the bed to wake her mom up for breakfast. Laid in the bed after she got up regretting my life choices. Got up finally and went to the living room, and her oldest son was my age, and we all sat around the TV watching the Daytona 500. I hate NASCAR. They were huge Sterling Martin fans. I have no idea why I'll always remember that fact. They had Sterling Martin leather jackets on and everything. I just wanted a ride home and to get the hell out of there. I didn't have a car back then. They wouldn't take me home until the race was over. Awkward silence the whole time. Dale Earnhardt Jr. ended up winning the race, which they all seemed to be okay with. This was in 2004. Not my finest moment. I would get random phone calls from this woman every 6 weeks or so looking for a booty call, but I never did go back. Story 33. Staying with a friend in a hot country, met this guy at a bar who was mostly sober. We were wasted, and ended up agreeing to go back to his. Turned out he lived way out of town. We were in the car for over an hour. Got to his and got down to it. I woke up in the morning and realized I had come on my period in a big way. I was hanging. Soberly, there was a very big language barrier. I was young and ignored the fact I had bled all over his sheets and couldn't have explained even if I wanted to. He then gave me a lift home, but not before stopping off to see his dad in a neighboring town. Left me in the car for 40+ minutes while I hoped and prayed that the toilet roll I had stuffed in my pants in a hungover panic would see me through and stop me from bleeding all over the car seat while concentrating on not vomiting everywhere. The whole way back we didn't say a word. Not like we could converse much anyway. He definitely knew about his sheets. The most awkward car journey of my life. Story 34. I went on one date with a professional football player during summer training camps. He has just come back from training, and we were hooking up, and I was in a position where my legs were in his arms, and we were standing up and my hands were on his neck, so neither one of our hands weren't available. His nose started bleeding as soon as I went to tell him. He sneezed into my face and blood was everywhere. He put me down and I go to the bathroom to clean up. Now would be a good time to tell you I'm very squeamish with blood. I look at myself in the mirror and I am covered in blood like the scene from Carrie. And I pass out. The back of my head hits the glass shower door and it shatters. He runs into the bathroom and there is a naked, unconscious girl in his bathroom, covered in blood with glass everywhere. The team doctor had to make a house call. It was mortifying. I never saw him again. Story 35. Met this guy on Tinder and was extremely bored, so we went out for a drink and he eventually came back to mine. The night was nothing special, but I texted a pic of him to my best friend as a safety precaution. She texted back while I was on the date and said, "That's the guy that stole my cell phone in our high school gym class." And it absolutely was. That was just a very minor level of awkward. The real awkward was that he kept commenting on how nice my apartment building was. The next week, I ran into him in the hallway as he moved in. He said he loved it so much he had left and gone straight to the leasing office the morning after our date to find his own place there. Dude lived there for at least a year, and I would run into him frequently. We would simply nod at each other, but never dated again, lol. Story 36. Matched with an ex-co-worker on Tinder. Went over with some supplies to make drinks with. We watched a few minutes of a movie and got down to it. I was on an antidepressant at the time, so I was pushing rope but tried to make up for it as best I could. After some mildly successful attempts, my stomach was all shaken up and I started to get a hauntingly familiar feeling. The drinks I made earlier wanted out. So I made a dash for her bathroom and got maybe 70% of it in the toilet. I felt like the biggest POS ever and tried my best to clean what I could. The mood was beyond gone, so I apologized profusely and left. I felt so bad that the next day I got some air fresheners, a candle, and bath mats that matched her vibe to replace the ones I soiled. Boxed them up with a little note and put them on her doorstep while she was at work. Got a nice thank you text later, and that was that. Story 37. Matched with a guy on Tinder. Agree to go to his place. He warns me beforehand that his roommate is his brother, so we will have to be quiet. When I get there, the kitchen island is covered with empty Papa John's boxes and the sink is full of dishes. I ignore it because it's a common space. Well, his room was no better. Mattress on the floor, clothes piled all over the bed and the rest of the room. He asks if I want something to drink and I say yes. He pulls a bottle of whiskey out of a backpack in the corner of the room. Then, he makes a spot for me on the mattress by pushing clothes onto the floor. We pass the bottle back and forth while talking. Eventually, we start making out. We get naked and are both ready to get to business. I stop him to grab a condom. When I hand it to him, he pushed my hand back and tells me to do it. So, for the first time ever, I'm putting a condom on a guy. I have so many questions at this point, but decide to table them and see what happens. We are having sex, and he's not able to stay hard. He is pretending like everything is okay, and he keeps trying. Eventually, I say it's getting late, so we should probably call it a night. Hang tight. The most awkward part hasn't happened yet. I start looking around for my clothes. I find my bra and shirt and put them on. I'm now looking for my black leggings. The only light in the room at this point is the TV. They can't be far from where I was laying in the bed. I remember just taking them off and setting them arm's length away. I soon realized that a lot of his clothing is also black. Maybe it's just laying on top of some of his clothes. I tear his room apart. I must have examined every single piece of clothing in his room and still couldn't find them. I thought I was going crazy. Then it dawns on me. When he got dressed, he put on black pants. I go over to him and tell him to stand up. I can see right away that he's wearing my leggings. He had no idea. Story 38. I met a chick at a bar where a metal band was playing. I was already a few beers deep, but got there and ordered more drinks and talked and hit it off. Then we went into the basement of the bar to watch the band play, and she started basically making out with me in front of the stage. So I said let's dip early and not even finish the show cause she only lived like 2 blocks away, and so we went back to her place and had pretty sloppy drunk sex, and she ended up getting pissed off at me at the end cause I came in her ass crack, which I still don't know what means other than I pulled out of her while she was riding me. But anyway, she didn't want me to stay over, and it was like fucking -20 outside, so I grabbed my shit and walked around downtown until I found a cab, then took it to a train station where I left my car. Then when I got to my car, I realized I left my keys and everything scattered all over this chick's bedroom, so I had to call another cab and take it to my house. I didn't have my keys, and somehow my mom woke up in the middle of the night and let me inside the house. Then a few days later, I was texting this chick, and she said some other dude asked to be exclusive and said she'd mail me all the shit I left at her house, so I never saw her again, but I basically called her a cunt for sleeping around with multiple dudes and getting drunk and kicking me out of her house at like 2 a.m. Story 39. This is gonna make me sound like such a heartless person, but here goes. I was in college, really not looking for anything more than a one-night stand. Met him at a bar, we had mutual friends, and we all spent a few hours bar hopping all together. He bought me a hot dog, we smoked a joint, and went back to his place. Guy tried some dumb porn moves that I just wasn't enjoying, so I was constantly having to instruct him and tell him to chill. Neither of us came. Then I'm trying to get out of there, and he started crying a lot and told me how much this human connection meant to him. He said he was feeling suicidal, and like nobody really cared about him. He asked me to stay and hold him, so I cradled him like a baby for hours. He tried sucking on my nipple, and I felt really odd about it and told him to stop. He cried more, told me his whole life story. Eventually, the sun came up and he came around. I eventually made my exit once his roommate came home. I think I texted him to check in once or twice, but he kind of pretended like nothing happened and stopped responding. Life went on, and it nagged at me that I didn't do anything more and started to worry he had ended it. A few months later, new semester starts. He walked into my bio class, and I was so relieved he was still alive. His face turned so red, but I tried to talk to him after class, but he just walked away from me. Story 40. Stayed in my college town over spring break one year. Most students leave during the break, so the town really dies, and there is very little to do in way of socializing as a college student. Linked up with a local girl on MySpace, Lowell, who was just as bored as I was, and had her come over to hang out at my apartment. She was super cute, actually looked like her pictures, and had a bubbly personality. But my biggest takeaway after meeting her in person was that she had an absolutely perfect ass. We had instant chemistry, and it became clear early on that we had a one-way ticket to Pound Town. But it took us a bit too long to get going. We actually watched the movie I put on, LOL. So by the time we made it to my room, it was super late, and we ended up only dry humping during an intense, super hot makeout session. We set up another date a few days later, and I'm super excited because we're clearly gonna fuck this time. But to help things along, we get drinks involved. Perhaps too many drinks. While we're hanging out, drinking and flirting, I got up to use the restroom like 3 times at least, and I noticed that she never had to go. It was to the point that I remember thinking, damn, this girl's got a steel bladder. Which then my drunken lizard brain started rationalizing. Maybe she's got a super strong, talented vagina. Let's fucking G. We finally take our little party to the bedroom, get undressed. But before we could really start getting into it, she passes out. Being the gentleman that I am, I immediately cease all operations, put a blanket on her, slip into some pajama pants, and pass out next to her. We'll take a rain check, no problem. I wake up in the middle of the night and feel wetness under me and think FUCK. I just pissed the bed with a girl here. But I quickly realize that it wasn't me. Turn on a lamp and witness the biggest damn ring of pee surrounding the girl. Like she had an eruption of pee while she was out. Of course, I'm thinking, so that's where all that pee went. Super strong vagina indeed. As I'm sitting in a chair next to the bed, trying to figure out how the fuck to handle the situation, I hear a soft trickling sound and think, no way. It can't be. And sure enough, she's not done yet. She's laying on her side in fetal position, with a steady stream of urine coming out even more. I grabbed a towel and crammed it under her, not knowing what the hell else to do. I eventually zombie walked her into my shower, then flipped my mattress over for a short-term solution. The pee soaked through and ruined my box spring as well. I bring her back to bed after, and the next morning I don't think she has a clue that she dumped 18 gallons of pee into my bed. We go our separate ways. School starts up again and I get super busy, and that was that. Didn't even get to bounce around that perfect ass of hers. We did ultimately meet up a few years later when I was a senior and did the deed, but the magic was gone, and it felt, I dunno. I don't want to say forced because of what that can imply, but you know. It was clear we missed our window for some hot, carefree sex, but damn, that was a lot of pee. Story 41. This is something that I didn't know happened until weeks later. Hooked up with someone I brought home from a party. He slept over and left the next morning. Weeks later, I was looking at my diary and discovered he wrote me a message in my diary. The most awkward after a ONS happened a few days later. I'm in my room when the doorbell rings. My roommate answers and then finds me to tell me someone is here to see me. It's ONS guy, and he looks like he just walked in the rain. It was not raining. It was sweat from him running from the train to my house. He tells me he has a letter to give me and how he ignored the advice of his friends to not do this. I am in shock. I told him I had fun, and I hope he finds someone who can give him what he is looking for. I did not take the letter. Part of me regrets not taking it, but I also did not want to give this person hope that I wanted to join his crazy train. Story 42. Qualifier. I mean, no offense to anyone with mental health challenges. I personally take medication for my own issues. About 8 years ago, after a rough breakup with my long-term girlfriend, I went through a bit of a slutty phase. During this time, I matched with a girl on Tinder, and we ended up meeting for a one-night stand. The night went smoothly. We chatted, shared some laughs, and ultimately got down to why we were there. Afterward, as we were lying there, she started talking about when we'd hang out again, and then casually dropped that she'd like me to meet her parents. Now, I was open to maybe hanging out again, but I had been clear from the start that I wasn't looking for anything serious. Assuming she was joking, I laughed and replied with a sarcastic, "Well, we have been together for so long, right?" Thinking we were on the same page. But then, her expression shifted. She got really serious, looked me dead in the eyes, and said she needed to be honest. She was a diagnosed schizophrenic and wanted me to know from the beginning. I was caught off guard but reiterated that I wasn't looking for a relationship. She seemed to understand, so after some polite goodbyes, I left. A few hours later, I got a text from her. She told me she was planning a 2-week trip to Germany and asked if I'd come with her. She even promised I wouldn't have to pay for anything. It'd be just a normal vacation. For a solid 5 minutes, I actually considered it, imagining the spontaneous adventure. But then reality kicked in, and I figured it probably wasn't the best idea. Story 43. Met a girl at the club back in my 20s. We chatted a bit, danced, and drank more than 4/5 doctors recommend. We decided to go back to my place, but stopped at a Taco Bell for something to eat on the way. Later, at my place, we were making out on the couch and getting handsy, and she offered to go downtown. And of course, I said sure. She starts doing her thing, and I'm loving it. But after a while, she tries to deep throat me and I hear a choking sound from her and a sudden increase in warmth. She yacked all over my lap and down onto the couch beneath me. 7-layer burritos were still a thing back then, but I never saw the appeal after that. She's mortified, crying, and tells me to go have a shower to clean myself while she cleans the puke from the couch. A few minutes later, I come out of the shower only to find no trace of her, and the puke still soaking into the cushions. I don't even think we knew each other's names, but I'll never forget the look on her face. Story 44. I once picked up a woman in a bar who was somewhat older than me. She agreed to go home with me, and once there, even though we were already drunk, we smoked some weed, started groping, and got naked. At some point, she suggested that I tie her up because it turned her on. In fact, she became very insistent about being tied up before doing the deed. I was only like 18 to 19, and this was all new to me. I'd never tied a woman up, so I was like, WTF? After more making out and groping, she actually got weirdly agitated that I wouldn't tie her up. Finally, I agreed to tie her drunk ass up if that's what she wanted. I told her to give me a few minutes, and I started looking all over my place for some rope or twine or something to tie her up with. And of course, I had nothing. No rope, no cord, no duct tape, no twine, no nothing. And then I remembered the neighbor's clothesline. Story 45. This is not a pleasant tale. I was on holiday on my own in Torremolinos. Very inexperienced with relationships. Went to the hotel bar and ordered a beer. There was a football match on the telly. An attractive, to me at least, lady was sitting at the bar on her own. I rather pathetically asked which team she supported. Turned out she wasn't too bothered because although she was Spanish, she lived in Switzerland. Against all odds, we got talking and moved on to another bar. And another, etc. Eventually, we were both off our heads and went back to the hotel. Her room. She stripped off. An amazing body. I had bought some condoms at one of the bars. Imagine my disappointment when no matter how I tried, I missed the target. Brewer's droop. I eventually gave up and used a selection of fingers, and she seemed satisfied. The next day, I met her in the bar, hoping for another go, sober. She began by asking if I had used a condom the night before. She thought I had shagged her and was worried about getting pregnant. I reassured her that there was no danger of that. All good so far. She then asked me if I knew what AIDS was. I nearly died of fright. She had AIDS, albeit well controlled, with low viral load. I spent the rest of the holiday avoiding her and drinking myself into oblivion. I was too scared to get a test and was traumatized for years. Moral of the story: Brewer's droop can be a good thing. Story 46. I was very drunk for most of my early 20s. The one-night stand I had that sticks out. Went to a club after a recent breakup with an ex. Bumped into her best friend. We start talking about what? Who knows? Was I attracted to her? Not at all. Next thing I know, my drunk zombie self is sweet talking to her. My memory keeps coming in and out. We end up in front of my apartment complex. We get upstairs to my place, and then cloths come off. First off, we both don't end up showering after the club. Was way too drunk and horny. Normally that was my routine. After all that dancing and sweating, the girl had an odor. I ignored it and continued. She turns around and in doggy position tells me to give it to her. All I remember is her hair. Not down there, but on top of her head. She always had this obnoxiously long head hair. She was so proud of it. Her hair was up to her knees. She just always tied it up in a way that you couldn't tell. So I start the act, and next thing I know, her hair is getting everywhere. I mean literally everywhere. I try to move it here and there, but I was too intoxicated and couldn't think straight. Next thing, the hair is getting in the way down there. It starts wrapping around my parts. Somehow the hair gets tangled around my penis and the condom. As you can tell, that was not pleasant. I couldn't get hard anymore. The drinking, the odor, and the hair killed the mode. I ended up getting tired and passing out. Next morning, I have one of those "oh snap, where am I? What year is this" moments. I turn over and see some girl next to me. Once I realized it was my ex's best friend, things got very awkward. She starts telling me she has always had feelings for me, starts playing with my hair, and tries to cuddle with me. I was very uncomfortable, but I offered her breakfast, and we made small talk, which I was counting every minute. Politely walked her out and ran to the shower. Never talked to her again. Years later, I found out my ex found out, and their relationship ended. Oh, and the long-haired bandit, she finally cut her hair and lost weight. Story 47. Freshman year in college. In the first couple of weeks, there was a girl on the floor above. On a scale from 1 to 10, she was an 11. I mean perfect. Every guy hit on her. She was brutal and turning everyone down with, "I have a boyfriend at a different school, but if I didn't," to just looking at a guy and shaking her head. I even heard she gave someone the ew when he asked her out. Well, I guess she broke up with her boyfriend because one of the guys got some alcohol and she started drinking and making out. The door gets closed. Sock hung on the door. She sat on a guy's face, and everyone on the floor knew she was enjoying it. Then, well, he got shit-faced. Literally, I guess the alcohol orgasm. He yelled, puked. She yells, and then she is seen leaving the floor crying. The wild part, the next day, he was trying to get hold of her. As he put it, he was willing to go out, date her. He was still in lust. She was never seen again. I think she left and dropped out the next day. He will forever be known as shit-faced to everyone who was on that floor. And I still wonder if I had been around that night when she broke up with her boyfriend. I mean, she told me, if I didn't have a boyfriend, would I forever be known as shit-faced? Story 48. I'm 50 now, but in my late 20s and early 30s I had far too many ONSs. One New Year's I went to Scotland to visit a friend, Janet, who took me to a house party on the main street of Edinburgh. I'm from London and made quite an impression on one of the Scottish girls who lived at the house. Ended up shagging in her en-suite shower within hours of being at the party. We went out separate ways on the evening while I traversed between the party and one next door. Later I shagged another girl from the same party, not thinking anything of it, and extremely happy to have bagged 2 girls at one party in one night. I was a male whore and quite proud of it. A few hours later, so hell erupted as both girls, who were housemates and very good friends, discovered they'd both slept with me. I just sat in the living room, still very much content before going to sleep on the sofa and leaving quietly in the morning while everyone slept, together with a bag of leftover booze for the next day's exploits. My friend who took me to the party was suitably impressed by the whole affair, thankfully. Story 49. He was big down there, and it hurt a little bit because despite my username I am not big down there. My vagina is rather small and I was 18 and still relatively new to sex, so just asked if he could take it slow cause his dick was massive. Like yeah, in a good way, but also a bad way as it hurt quite a lot, so already kinda awkward cause he clearly wanted to go a bit faster but still complied. Anyway, we did it, but after I had some pain down there. So when it was over I stood up to go and pee. I was walking weirdly, and he asked me if it was like I had just lost my virginity again. Most awkward fucking silence of my life. After with him thinking he'd scored some weird achievement. Stayed for a while then just left. It just got weird AF. I stupidly went back and slept with him again and asked the same question again. Then when he came on my tits, grabbed them and mind milking me like a cow cause of the cum there, and kinda joking it was as if the cum was like milk that had come out of my boobs. Just went with it. Made an excuse to leave then left. Very attractive guy, but man he was weird as fuck. Story 50. I was once dating this girl who was open. We've been getting into things for a while, and she ended up introducing her friend into the mix a couple of times. Alright, just soak up the experiences, count myself a lucky guy, and move along, right? No. This goes on and off for the remainder of that year, and right after New Year's her friend we'll call Sandra introduced me to her friend. So I have my actual girl at home, but now Sandra is hitting me at work telling me she and Sandra's friend want me to meet them at a bar after work. I think free drinks and tell my girl. Sandra was buying me a drink, and I assumed we would be going to the house after. Nope. Not 5 minutes at the bar and Sandra's friend is telling me how Sandra was talking about me and wouldn't drop the subject. Eventually, she gets up, gives me a kiss, and says she got a hotel room for the night and walked off. Shit. Okay. So I text my girl and tell her to call Sandra because clearly there were plans here I just became a part of, and I didn't want to leave her at home clueless about the situation. She didn't reply before friend comes back to the table saying the tab is paid and I can leave my car here until the lot clears out at 3 a.m. Damn, it's like that? Okay. So I tell Sandra to call GF because I feel like lines are about to cross and I wanted to keep things clean. So far, I'd been invited to drinks and gotten an impromptu invitation in a little over an hour. So I was trying to cover bases. Sandra says okay, so that's the last I think of it. We hop in friend's car and ride to the hotel. Friend checks and then we head to the room. I roll up and we're sitting there talking, then all of a sudden friend says something in Sandra's ear, then tells me she wants to cut some music on. She put something on her phone, then without warning walked over and cut the lights. I knew what that implied, so I put the wrap on the floor and just kind of laid back on the bed. A little dirty talk started, and I could just barely see them from the curtain gap, but it's smack in the middle of the night with no lights, so I was mostly talking and just sitting there. Eventually, we find each other and get handsy. Clothes slowly disappear, and I'm having fun, then I notice. I'm soft. Bad soft, like getting a new physical in a cold room soft. I start freaking. Nobody had said anything yet, but it was clear they noticed. I doubled down on the dirty talk and tried to clear my head. Useless. Eventually, friend stops and turns on the light. I'll never forget it. The disgust and humiliation is searing. The light flashes on and there we are. 2 naked, pissed-off women. Me bottomless with a cold, soft dick looking all sad. In a red roof at 2 a.m. I didn't even have an answer. I'd only had a Long Island at the bar, so it wasn't like I had liquor dick. I was confused and they were visibly and audibly annoyed. Top it off? Sandra never called the house. So when I get home from this experience, me and my girl get into this blowout fight and she leaves permanently. Ended up losing the apartment over it. This memory will be buried with me.